now approaching day 3 of the partial government shutdown, which started this weekend, over the weekend. This time, the shutdown only affects the Department of Homeland Security. So is Capitol Hill working on a solution to this end? And here now to break all this down and much more of what's happening across the country is Casey Harper and Travis Weber, FRC's Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs. Casey and Travis, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, as I mentioned, the government is moving toward day 3 of the government shutdown, though it's only Department of Homeland Security. Casey, how will the shutdown of the DHS affect everyday Americans?
Sure, Tony. I mean, it's the question to be asking. But ironically here, Democrats have shut down DHS to stop ICE, but ICE is funded and going to continue doing what they're doing, deporting criminal illegal immigrants like they've been doing every day. So the shutdown doesn't actually impact what they say they're trying to stop, but it does have some other impacts, and they're going to get worse as it goes on. Primarily, it's TSA. So TSA agents are working without pay right now. And as you mentioned earlier on the show, there's just the common compassion that you have and decency you want to see people to be able to put food on the table. But I think there's also really a safety concern here. You know, I remember during the last shutdown, Tony, when I was going through TSA and I was kind of looking at the TSA workers because I knew at that point they weren't getting paid. This is later, and I think what was a 43-day shutdown. And I asked the guy, hey, do I need to take my laptop out of the bag? Because for some reason it changes at every airport. I don't know why. And I asked him, do I need to take my laptop out of the bag? And I'll never forget, he said to me, I don't care. I'm not getting paid anymore. That's what he said to me. And so I kept the laptop in the bag. But that's like a very telling real-world comment there that says maybe it's a safety issue as well.
It really is. I mean, it's a morale killer for that department. I know. I mean, I doubt there are very few people that would like to go 2-3 weeks without a paycheck. I mean, it's anyway. I think it's going to cause a brain drain, so to speak, from a very essential agency within the Department of the Federal Government. I want to move to another issue. Travis, over the weekend, there has been some developments on the Save America Act that passed the House last week that will protect federal elections. This passed the House, even had one Democrat vote along with it. This would, very common sense procedures for federal elections like voter ID, that you have to have an ID when you show up, just like you do at the airport. You got to show an ID. Well, you have to show an ID to vote. Now, there's been some developments. We've got Senate Republicans lining up for this as well.
Yeah, Tony, I think clearly this issue is one in which the American public is on the side of those who are backing this law. So the Democrats just don't have the public sentiment, the public feelings and support behind their position in opposing this. And the president even recently putting out a post detailing the law, the issues, the reasons for it, and the reasons it should be passed, I think clearly puts pressure on people, including the Democrats, who want to stand in opposition to this. So I think it's appropriately something that any common sense, anyone who cares about a fair and objective and truthful and accurate voting framework and voting system should be looking at this law and saying, well, it's common sense, let's support it. So clearly, as the political dynamics play out, you have a situation, and I think Republicans have the stronger upper hand on this one.
By the way, folks, you can weigh in on this because the Senate's going to have to move it. And right now, I'm not sure they're going to because they don't have the 60-vote threshold. But it would be good to see the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, move this forward. So if you'd like to add your voice to a petition that we have that we're going to deliver to them, text the word SAVE to 67742. That's SAVE to 67742 and add your voice, your name to literally tens of thousands of people who say it's time to protect our elections. All right, I want to go to California. Travis, California Governor Gavin Newsom recently signed Senate Bill 106 into law that is essentially a giveaway to Planned Parenthood. Talk about that.
It's sad. I mean, tragically, the state of California, the government of California, we don't want to say the state of California because there are people who disagree with this nonsense, but the current government of California decided to give away its taxpayer dollars to Planned Parenthood, really bolstering Planned Parenthood in the face of pressure they might be under as a result of pro-life actions in other states, really specifically in this case, the president's actions that he's taken that have led to them not receiving all of the funding that they otherwise would get from the U.S. taxpayer at the federal level. So here, Governor Newsom stepping in and saying, California taxpayers, I'm going to put you on the hook, and we're going to support Planned Parenthood with our tax dollars. It's kind of what you have going on here, despite the verbiage that we hear, the war on women, women's health, healthcare. Those are cover. Those are smoke screens for what's actually going on here. Big abortion business is being propped up by the California taxpayer.
Yeah, Casey, $90 million. I mean, California, I mean, this is a high-tax state. They have, I think, about $500 billion in debt as a nation. And, I mean, what does this say?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, we have Republicans in power at the federal level, but these states where Democrats have taken power, they keep reminding you of what Democrat rule could look like nationally. I mean, $90 million giveaway to Planned Parenthood in California. We're seeing in Virginia a lot of really aggressive, very far left principle policies come out, like third trimester abortion in Virginia. They're pushing marijuana everywhere, gambling, a lot of other things. And in California, one more thing is, imagine if your house had burned down in the Palisade fires and you still haven't been able to rebuild, as many people there haven't, and yet the government's prioritizing giving $90 million to abortions. I can't imagine being in that position.
It's really fascinating to see what's happening in the states across the country. You look at the state policies, and of course, California lost congressional seats in the last election, the last census, because people were leaving the state, and I think in part it's because of the politics. But that said, there are some red states that are taking some positive actions. We have Iowa and actually I think West Virginia, both. Their legislatures taking a look at laws that would prohibit the abortion drugs being mailed into their state, something that Family Research Council has been very active on trying to change that FDA policy. Travis, what do we know about those efforts?
Yeah, Tony, I think clearly the response here is states, the people in the states and through their elected leaders are responding to the fact that we have states being undermined by the abortion drug regimen, primarily mifepristone, but it's really abortion drugs being mailed through telehealth appointments and other means from out of state, right? From mailed into states that are trying to protect life. Those people and their governments are being undermined. So West Virginia is as a response to that dynamic. We know of the situation that's arisen out of Louisiana with the state effort to protect life there and the litigation around it. Iowa is focused on the telehealth dynamic and in-person requirements, which would also get at the out-of-state dynamic that we have that's problematic. There's a bill moving in Ohio that would deal with liability and require warnings to be issued, warning the drug companies of potential liability at the hands of those taking them. So clearly, Tony, there's a burgeoning movement here that is being driven by people who are upset, I think, at their states, their voice being undermined by dynamics which really are in the purview of the federal government to regulate, to step in. But we're encouraged by this response that we see from the states.
Now, in the Iowa, if I recall correctly, in that legislation, or there was actually a few pieces they were moving forward, it included a private right of action, did it not?
I believe so. I'd have to check that one specifically, but Tony, that private right of action is an element that states, I think, are taking a look at. I mean, there was that's relevant to the Ohio bill that's moving in their legislature now as well.
It's what I was talking about earlier with Eric Johnson about, that way, regardless of how the political ideology of the executive branch might swing in a particular state, if individuals can then take private rights of action, now it's not criminal, but it is civil, and it's still punitive in many ways. So I think that's an effective tool. Not that I want to advocate for more litigation, but sometimes if that's the only way to get at the heart of the problem, then it should be done. Casey, Utah, another example where legislators passed a trio of bills protecting kids from the harms of the so-called gender-affirming care. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's right. In Utah, we've seen bills come forward which ban gender-affirming, as they call them, gender-affirming, or you could say really gender-denying surgeries, but not just surgeries, because there's been a lot of progress in surgeries, but also the drugs that go along with it, which are often prescribed to young kids to allegedly transition them from one gender to another. So this is another aggressive push that we've seen in Utah, but we're seeing it in other states. And the data just keeps coming out, not just the biblical foundations, which we've always had, not just the common sense intuition that, hey, maybe we shouldn't be taking 12-year-olds and putting them on drugs, but we also have had the time now for studies and research to come out, which is showing not good outcomes for these kids, showing that they often regret it, that their rate of suicidality does not go down, because you're often told if you don't let your kid transition, that they're more likely to commit suicide. That's been debunked. And so this data is finally giving lawmakers the ammunition at the state level to say, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to take a stand. That issue is very unpopular. And Tony, one point I'll make before throwing it back to you is what we're seeing as we've taken this quick survey of the states is that despite what you're hearing from the national level political strategists for Democrats, that we're going to talk about affordability and all these things, when you look down into it, Democrats, the fights they're taking on are all the same old, tired, unpopular battles. It's transgender issues for kids. It's stopping deportations of illegal criminal immigrants. It is, funding Planned Parenthood. So there's as far as I can tell, the Democratic Party has not remade itself. It's taken on the same unpopular battles.
Yeah, that's a good point, Casey. It's kind of a smokescreen. I do want to mention one of the bills in Utah would force private insurance to fund detransition.
Yes.
They've been pushing it, but as a one-way street. Now, I think it's going to cause them to think twice before they start funding. In fact, another one of the bills prohibits the public employees' insurance from funding these gender procedures. But I want to, we've just got about 2 minutes left, Casey, and you brought up something that I want to throw out there for discussion. Biblical truth. Now, we know the social science eventually will catch up if it's allowed to be done. What's been happening is a suppression of the social sciences when it comes to human sexuality, which would include marriage and so on and so forth. But this, you take the issue for life. For 50 years we've been fighting this issue of life, but it was a biblical issue, and we knew if we stood on it, eventually enough of the people would come around to understand that truth, because it would be borne out in the social sciences and in society as a whole. As long as we still have a bit of, as Romans 1 says, we get to a point where we can no longer even discern right from wrong. But as long as we have some discernment left as a society, we can arrive at the right position. But that's why it's so essential that believers not abandon biblical truth even when it's not popular. I'll give each of you a thought, ability to give a thought on that.
Sure, I can jump in. I'll jump in. It's going back to Romans. There are some who are on over an extreme side of this issue who have just exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and they don't want to know the truth. There's a certain level of hardness of heart where it doesn't matter what kind of studies or truth. People they want to do what they want to do. But there's a middle of the country that I think is very persuadable and persuaded on this issue. And what we've seen, similar to how when there came out a picture of a baby in the womb, we finally got the technology to show detailed pictures of babies in the womb. It was a shift, and people said, wow, it's actually a baby. And a lot of people came over to a pro-life or a moderate pro-life stance. I think this detransitioners showing the horrors of their stories is causing a shift for many people.
Travis, give you the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, Tony, as you often say, we're not going anywhere in our stance for biblical truth. We'll speak to the political powers from the perspective of biblical truth. And as Christians look at 2,000 years of our own history, we need to remember that we, as the Holy Spirit advanced the gospel against the powerful Roman Empire, were on an uphill battle until the Roman Empire blessed the development of Christianity, which led to Western civilization, right? And we're in the long arc of history, and we always need to defend the truth and not compromise on it.
No white flags. No white flags. Travis, Casey, thanks so much for joining us.